Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: China clamps down on state secrets law, prompting widespread business concern. How Li Keqiang's sudden death took Chinese Communist Party by surprise. AP, Biden, Xi agree on meeting next month. As China looks to broker Gaza peace, anti-Semitism surges online. Biden is still living in the 1990s. China clamps down on state secrets law, prompting widespread business concern. Telegraph. China is set to update its state secrets law, which would include banning state employees from traveling overseas without prior approval. The new legislation is part of Beijing's efforts to tighten control over state secrets and comes as the country is locked in an intelligence war with the US and its allies. The European Union Chamber of Commerce in China has called for more clarity on the definition of a state secret, while some critics have warned that it could lead to an abuse of power by government entities. How Li Keqiang's sudden death took Chinese Communist Party by surprise. The Independent. The sudden death of former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang has reportedly surprised the Communist Party, with an official obituary only being released hours after the news broke. Li's death, at the age of 68, has caught the country's leadership off guard, as senior leaders in China typically live long lives. The delay in issuing the obituary has led to speculation and conspiracy theories, which the party is trying to curb. Li's death also comes at a politically sensitive time, following the sacking of Defense Minister Li Keqiang. AP, Biden, Xi agree on meeting next month. Yahoo! US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed in principle to meet at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit in November, according to an unnamed US official cited by the Associated Press. The official stated that details on the date and location of the meeting are yet to be finalized. No official confirmation has been made by either government regarding Xi's attendance at the summit. As China looks to broker Gaza peace, anti-Semitism surges online. New York Times. China is attempting to position itself as a neutral mediator in the Israel-Hamas conflict, with its top diplomat calling for restraint and a Chinese envoy traveling to the Middle East to help prevent a wider war. However, China is facing criticism for its refusal to condemn Hamas for starting the war and for its censorship of anti-Israeli sentiment on its heavily censored internet. China's state-run media has accused the United States of supporting Israeli aggression and perpetuated tropes of Jewish control of American politics. Biden is still living in the 1990s. Telegraph. The U.S. is currently providing military support to both Israel and Ukraine, but there are concerns that it may have to prioritize one conflict over the other. President Joe Biden has emphasized the importance of upholding the rules-based international order and holding those who violate the rules accountable. However, the reality of international relations is that states act in their own self-interest and will use force to achieve their objectives if the benefits outweigh the costs. Biden's assumption that ideology, rather than interests, drives the behavior of America's adversaries and competitors is flawed. It is important for policymakers to have an accurate understanding of the world in order to develop effective policies. Presidents of the U.S. and China to meet in November. AP. Yahoo! U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed to meet on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, APEC, to be held in San Francisco in November. An American official familiar with the planning of the meeting revealed that the parties had reached an agreement in principle to hold a meeting between Biden and Xi Jinping on the summit's sidelines. The exact date of the meeting and details have not yet been agreed upon. Beijing has not officially confirmed that Xi Jinping will attend the APEC summit. This meeting comes as part of a series of high-level contacts between the U.S. and China to stabilize difficult relations between the two countries. Biden, Xi agree to meet for talks amid high tension between U.S. and China. The Sydney Morning Herald. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to meet on the sidelines of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit in San Francisco next month, according to an anonymous U.S. official. The two sides have reached an agreement in principle to hold a meeting during the summit, although details such as the date and venue have not been finalized. The White House has described the meeting as a positive development and an opportunity to maintain open lines of communication. Biden and Xi have been engaged in a series of high-level contacts as they seek to stabilize their relationship amid ongoing tensions. The meeting comes at a time of conflict in Ukraine and Israel, and both leaders have emphasized the need for responsible competition and cooperation to address global challenges. The U.S. has urged China to increase its role on the world stage and use its influence to promote calm and stability in the Middle East. Top U.S. and Chinese diplomats pave way for Joe Biden and Xi Jinping summit. ABC. The US and China have agreed to work towards a summit between President Joe Biden and President Xi Jinping next month, according to US officials. The announcement followed talks between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and senior US diplomats in Washington, including a one-hour meeting with Biden. The discussions covered issues including military relations, China's actions in the South China Sea, Taiwan, human rights, and detained Americans in China. The two sides also had candid and in-depth exchanges about the conflict in the Middle East, and expressed hopes for a meeting between Biden and Xi at the APEC summit next month. California governor's trip shows US-China engagement is still possible on a state level. Associated Press. California Governor Gavin Newsom's trip to China to discuss climate change has been seen as a step towards US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping meeting in San Francisco in November for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit. The trip highlighted the existing relationship between California and China, and even demonstrated that collaboration is possible between the two nations. The warm reception from China sends a clear signal that working with California is both desired and politically safe. Despite the deteriorated relationship between China and the US over the past few years, China still views US states as pragmatic business partners. US urges Beijing to temper Iran's response to Israel-Hamas war. Financial Times. The US has urged China to use its relationship with Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to encourage calm and prevent the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from spreading. The issue was raised during a visit to Washington by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who held meetings with President Joe Biden and other US officials. The US is concerned about the possibility of Iranian military action supporting Hamas or Hezbollah, which could trigger a wider conflict in the Middle East. Israel has criticized China for not taking a critical stance against Hamas. Well, my dear viewers, it seems like China is making headlines once again. Let's dive into the latest news from the Middle Kingdom. First up, we have China's update to its state secrets law. Now, I know what you're thinking, what's the big deal? Every country has laws to protect its secrets. Well, my friends, this new legislation is causing some concern among businesses and critics alike. The law would ban state employees from traveling overseas without prior approval, which could potentially lead to abuse of power by the government. The European Union Chamber of Commerce in China is calling for more clarity on the definition of a state secret. Looks like China is tightening its grip on state secrets, but at what cost? Next, we have the surprising death of former Chinese Premier Li Keqiang. Now, it's not every day that a senior Chinese leader passes away, especially at the age of 68. The delay in issuing an obituary has led to speculation and conspiracy theories, which the Communist Party is trying to squash. This unexpected death comes at a politically sensitive time, following the sacking of Defense Minister Li Keqiang. It seems like China's leadership is caught off guard. I guess even the Communist Party can't predict everything. Now, onto some international news. US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping have agreed, in principle, to meet at the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit in November. The power of diplomacy. The exact details are yet to be finalized, but this is a positive step towards improving US-China relations. Let's hope they can find some common ground and avoid any diplomatic faux pas. Fingers crossed. Speaking of diplomacy, China is attempting to position itself as a neutral mediator in the Israel-Hamas conflict. However, it's facing criticism for its refusal to condemn Hamas and its censorship of anti-Israeli sentiment on the internet. China's state-run media has even accused the United States of supporting Israeli aggression and perpetuated tropes of Jewish control. Oh, China, always trying to have it both ways. Will it be able to maintain its neutrality while also appeasing its domestic audience? Only time will tell. And lastly, we have President Biden living in the 1990s. Okay, maybe not literally, but his approach to international relations seems a bit outdated. He's emphasizing the importance of upholding the rules-based international order and holding violators accountable. But let's be real, folks, states act in their own self-interest, and sometimes that means using force to achieve their objectives. Biden's assumption that ideology, rather than interests, drives the behavior of America's adversaries and competitors is a bit flawed. We need a realistic understanding of the world in order to develop effective policies. Well, that's all the news from China today, my friends. What are your thoughts on these developments? Do you agree with China's tightening control over state secrets? And what about Biden's approach to international relations? I'm all ears, so let's hear what you have to say. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6do Brief via email.